welcome. And thank you for being here. So thrilled that you've chosen to join your time with us today. We know that you have a lot of options, and we're so grateful that you chose to spend this valuable time here with Julia Patrick, myself, and our fantastic guest, Mark Buzan. And I hope I'm saying that right.
Buzan, yes.
Buzan. Let me do that. Mark Buzan. So thank you. Society of Nonprofit Board Directors. And there's a nonprofit board summit coming up that we're going to hear all about. And Mark is really going to peel back so many layers of what we might have thought the reason that NPO board members serve, and really dive into why they truly serve. So before we do jump into this conversation with you, Mark, we of course want to make sure that our guests know who they are seeing or perhaps listening to in our podcast. Julia Patrick, CEO of American Nonprofit Academy. I'm Jarrett Ransom, your nonprofit nerd, CEO of the Raven Group, and we are marching towards our 600th episode. Thank you so very much to our amazing sponsors, which include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Fundraising Academy, Nonprofit Nerd, Your Part-Time Controller, the Nonprofit Atlas, Nonprofit Thought Leader, as well as Staffing Boutique. These companies, many of them, have been with us from the beginning, which was March of 2020. As I just mentioned, we have over 600 episodes. If you miss anything from today or you want to hear it again, you can find us far and wide on multiple channels. That includes Roku, YouTube, Amazon Fire TV, as well as Vimeo. But wait, there's more. What? You heard me mention we are on podcasts. So wherever you stream your podcast, go ahead and queue up The Nonprofit Show. And you can listen to this episode with Mark Buzan here as we dive into why your board members truly serve on the NPO. So Mark, welcome.
Thank you. And congratulations. 600 episodes. That's quite a compliment and an accomplishment.
Thank you. You know, in the very beginning, it was a labor of love, as we just spoke about a labor of life. This is a labor of love. And we have really grown to love waking up to do it. Truth be told, I'm an early bird, Julia's a night owl. So together we combine our energy and efforts. But we are really honored to have the continued interest, not only, you know, the support from our sponsors, but interest of amazing thought leaders like yourself. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mark, where you're joining us from, and
Sure.
What you do in this big world of ours.
Certainly. Thank you for that. Then, yes. So my name is indeed Mark Buzan. I am a 25-year professional in the field of associations. Most of my experience actually has been in the professional association aspect of the nonprofit world. We talk about nonprofits, you know, they're a big umbrella and like that. But I have done a number of years experience in the charitable world. And so what I do, and what's one main thing that I do is I run an association management company, and that's over the years is really because we run the day-to-day affairs for a number of different organizations at the same time. Had a unique opportunity over the years to really get to interact with more than one board at a time and get a sense from them as to what makes them tick. And that's always been a bit of a passion of mine and that's I guess that's why I'm curious. I want to know, get under the hood and understand what things are, reverse engineer them, and really get a sense of things. And one of the organizations that we have under our wing is the Society of Nonprofit Board Directors, and the impetus of the beginning of this really dated back to a bit of a story on this is back in 2015. I can talk about it a little bit more openly now with the benefit of time. I like to say I was fired into success. And after getting under the wrong end of a disagreement, let's say, with my board, as this.
Okay.
And if you've been an executive director, maybe you've had an agreement on this. And this is a bit of a sad thing that we don't talk about this very much, about that dynamic of that relationship between the board and the executive director and that. And it took me a long time, frankly, to really kind of reflect and like this, because I know a little bit about myself. I'm just that type of guy. I get the horse blinders on me, and I know what I got to do, and I get down to it, and I hire at it there, and my attitude at that time is, damn it, can we say that? I don't know on this over there.
Yeah, you did, so we're good.
Yeah, I know what I need to do. Why can't they see it? And this has been after an experience of one hand of a board who literally were in like not talk about nose in. They had fingers, palms, face in there into the business like this. And I ran from that organization only to get into the opposite end of an organization, like to say, who's literally, to quote Dr. Phil, you'd have to jump onto the hood of their car to get their attention on anything, on really big things that mattered, like potential fraud and all these kinds of issues like this. And after that experience and licking my wounds, if you will, I like to say, I said, okay, what part in this did I own? Yeah. And I think that's something that takes some time. Okay, what part did I? And that's hard. That's really hard as an individual to say, okay, what part did I own? Because it usually takes two to tango on this. Mm-hmm. And so as I was kind of discovering and figuring out what would be my next move. I had a number of chats with board directors at the time to ask them, okay, check your attitude like this. From what's your situation like this? What's your view on the matter that happened? And why do you do this? I said, genuinely speaking, you don't get paid for this. You get a lot of grief for it. You're legally sometimes responsible for a lot of stuff, like really serious stuff. Yeah. I think, Julia, you and I, we talked about this in North America, you can legally responsible, but in places like Australia, you can go to jail for some of this stuff, like a jail and fine. They don't mess around in down under, I'll tell you right now. They really don't mess around for boards. So why do you do this? Mm-hmm. And the response after speaking to a number of them, one after another, said, my God, okay. The first thing is I noticed they kept on repeating the same damn mistake everybody else had seen time and time and time again like this, because the nonprofit world works in silos. Mm-hmm. If you're on the board of your local chamber or board of trade, well, you can't possibly ever learn anything, let's say, from your local community foundation. No, your boards are completely different, right? Or the American Cancer Foundation, a big giant organization, they got nothing to learn from a little small like this. Of course I'm being facetious. Of course they can learn something like this. It's always different greed, different issues, but the same thing kept on repeating themselves. I said, this is insane. Mm-hmm. This is insane. Why are they not learning from each other?
So let's learn from you then, because let's start off. And you mentioned something when you and I were talking, and Jarrett and I have had this conversation a lot on air and off air. Talk to us about the issue of a board member's ego and the sense of prestige, because that's a real thing. And again, to your point, we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it. And it's kind of like I said to you before, we kind of view it because we've got this nonprofit martyr syndrome there like this. Like it's like, I must be good, or I like to call it the Sir Galahad complex, because my cause is just, I must be right on this. Drop it. Everybody, it's human nature. It's just simply human nature to be motivated by a personal thing like that. Like, get over yourself. It's okay. One of my favorite quotes is actually from one of your generally in the US, General Patton. He said, cherish your prima donnas. They will do wonders for you. Mm-hmm. Cherish your prima donnas. What does that mean? Okay. People have a motivation to do something like this. And I got to tell you, there's a bit of this, Julia, stepping aside, a bit of self-interest in this. I must admit that when I was founding at the same time, this organization, I was founding my association management company. I'm trying to logically reinverse something like this. Okay, what's my marketing message? What's people going to do this kind of thing? The whole business of, we're going to take stuff off your plate and we're going to run it there. Sure, that we're all like that. That's not what motivates people. Mm-hmm. You don't get paid for this. Okay. You don't get, that's a whole other debate. I don't think you should, but there's a debate on that. You don't get paid more or less for this. You can take a lot of grief for it. You take family, you take time, your valuable time away often from your career, your family, maybe your hobbies. Mm-hmm. And I said to somebody else, when I was just trying to understand why people do this kind of thing, that would motivate them to want to be, like this. It's like, are you a sucker for punishment? Why do you take all this grief? And amongst board directors, none of them really came out and said that this makes me feel good. This is great for my ego. Nobody's going to ever say that, right? Nobody going to like that, because
they're not going to just like peacock in front of you and be like,
no,
I do it for my ego.
Nobody says that. You kind of have to, Jared, read after a few years of just asking this consistent question the time.
Yeah.
I started reading between the lines. I said,
oh yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked them two questions, why do you do all this kind of things, is a few things. Is one, I want to feel like I'm leaving a legacy. I feel like I want to be part of something bigger than myself.
Mm-hmm.
And you start thinking all those kinds of things. Okay, why? Okay, that's just feeding a human nature of this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You can call it ego. I can call it ego. I'm okay with that. Let's just be okay. Can we just be okay with that and say what it is? It's okay. Everybody's got a human nature. In their human nature, you've got a Maslow's human needs to feel like you're safe, you're secure, you're loved, you're valued. And then there's a little bit further up is a little bit of a sense of self-extension on this.
Right.
So talking about that desire to be something bigger, Jarrett, you made the most interesting comment before we went live, and that was the number of people that have disclosed to you, I want to join a board, just get me on a board, help me out because it'll help my business.
Yeah, a lot of people, and I have not subscribed, but Mark, you might change my mind here about, people that will say, I want to be on a prestigious board that will help me grow my business. I can network, basically, rub elbows with the people that I need to help me grow my own portfolio or sell my own widgets. And I thought, that is not very altruistic of them. Shame on them, right? But Mark, you think differently.
Well, okay, I want to put a classification on that. You need to be that needs to be balanced and certain like that. If they're going in there and they're not contributing and living up to their responsibilities, okay, that's a whole other thing. That's a relationship, like in any really an employee-employer relationship. The employee is getting in there and they're just taking and contributing. Well, then that's not a given. Okay, but sure. For somebody, let's think about this, okay? One of my another favorite quotes, and like interviewing hundreds of board directors I have over the years, I asked him, I say, how do you view things? He says, Mark, we go to the board, and this was an international association like that, so it's a very like this. He says, we don't call our board members volunteers. We can call them professional contributors. Yeah. They contribute mind share and space and like that. And that leads back to, by the way, the ego is feeling like, okay, you value my input like this. Yeah. And as a result of this, and I'm giving you whatever it may be, years of experience, years of my connections, something like this. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. And it's reasonable that there's got to be some kind of a give and take. You wouldn't go to an employee and say, we'd like you to work 40 hours a week. And by the way, we'd like you to do it for the cause without a salary.
Right. Well, and the other thing I think about too is the best nonprofit board members that I see that are successful truly have built a community within the board, right? They've gotten to know each other. They support each other. They go beyond the boardroom. Honestly, these individuals go beyond the boardroom or beyond this Zoom, platform. And that's the same with staff, right? When you build the sense of belonging, the sense of community, the sense of, creating and crafting a legacy to give back, it's beyond the 8 to 5, it's beyond the boardroom. Now, here's, I would say, a curveball, but since we're in Final Fours of basketball, I feel like I'm going to say whatever it is. I know I'm clearly not a basketball fan. Sorry.
Who are you, girl?
So half point shot, right? Like I'm just lobbing it out there. Is what about what goes on? I'm jumpy here. What goes on in the office can at times be dramatic, a little dysfunctional, a little let's not let the board members know about this.
Yeah.
And so we keep the board members kind of on an island. Everything's roses and rainbows, and that's not always the case.
No, it's
so
not.
how do you address that disconnect of, is it being untruthful? Is it not being transparent? Like, how do you bridge that gap?
Well, that's a great point there. There's got to be an aspect of trust going on between the two. And I would also, this is a bit of a challenge I put out to staff. And I must say this is a bit of unease. I feel sometimes out there, there's a bit of a culture, what I call board bashing.
Yes.
Boards are not to be trusted. Boards are a pain in my, you know what?
They're in our way. They
are a unfortunate necessity I must tolerate.
Yes.
Rather than a resource that they could be there and should be there.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I always say. I challenge, if we're speaking to executive directors and the staff, is, okay, try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Okay. How are they viewing this?
Yeah.
Okay. Why are they involved in this? They've got a desire. Usually they got a desire to want to give back. They've got a feeling that they want to, this is a bit of a grandiose, not a grandiose thing. I'm feeling that I want to be able to, this edifies me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's probably the best way. This is a way I want to feel edified a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what? Good on you. My view, though. Good on you for doing that there. You should do that. That everybody should feel. I think in all sincerity, it's a human nature. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, to feel good about yourself. And if this is the way that you, if this is the way that you do that, then I'll off to you. I salute you for that. And you're doing something good at the same time. So to bring that trust factor in, I think there is a bit of an equal factor that has to be in there. There has to be a board. There has to be some staff in there that are prepared to understand and sometimes take off their own hat. Sure. I gotta tell you, right? Like, as the guy I said who was fired into success, that was not easy. That was not an easy exercise. At first of a while, you're angry, you're like that, and darn those guys. But it takes a certain degree of maturity to be able to say, okay, usually there's two to tango in things like this. What part do I own in this? So I would put that out there. And then to the boards as well, particularly the board leadership, is to also understand that everybody's idea of involvement or expectations is going to be different in yours, and be prepared for that.
You know, Mark, one of the things I'm always astounded by is the disconnect between what the actual role, duties, or responsibilities of the staff versus the board versus the CEO are. And I find that organizations that haven't communicated what those expectations are, using the guardrail kind of method of like, what lane should you be in? They're the ones that oftentimes have the most dysfunction. And to me, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, is, you know, when you see organizations that actually have support at the meeting, that are in the meetings, they can't vote and they might not even be at the table, but they're there, or they're observing, they're there to answer questions. Those organizations seem to have a better tenor when it comes to what's going on. And that disconnect, I feel, really occurs when staff is not present at the meetings. And for both of you, what do you see? How do you evaluate that?
Well, every case is going to be different in my mind, Julia, but you're right. I mean, like, obviously for more mature organizations, it's not uncommon. And I've seen that particularly for the senior staff, the CEO, maybe his or her VP or VPs or senior director equivalent will be there. You're very much right there to be as a resource, to be able to answer quickly that thing. But above all, I feel that from the beginning too, we have to do an effort. We have to make an effort to make boards feel like they're empowered, like this.
Interesting.
Everybody, I'm not the first one who has said this. This is true, but to say this kind of thing about explaining what the lines are and explaining the value of what their contribution, their professional contribution, really means and why that's important. I think. I you know, there's never going to be one size fits all on things, but I really do think that creating that culture, I think that's the best thing, the way to be able to do this, is you've got to really be very sensitive and insistent on creating a culture that is very grateful and thankful, and gently are enforcing to board directors and saying, please let us know, help us understand this, let's help us think this out.
Yeah.
I want to make a point there, and I don't know if it answers your thing like this, but it's popped in my head that I feel like if I don't get it out, I might forget it. But I have yet to meet a board director who's passionate about doing the minutes. It doesn't happen. I've yet to meet a board director who's passionate about making 10 fundraising calls.
Yeah.
I know that's a bit of a, in the US, for example, it's really, really big, but yeah, that's not the main reason why somebody does this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to ask, does it fall on governance, right? Like, does it really all tie into board governance, that fiduciary agent? And Julia, for me, same as Mark, one size does not always fit all. Most board meetings are open, which technically means staff can come to them. General public can come to them. I rarely see that happen, very rarely see that happen. And what I really experience is it's usually that executive, leadership team or the director level that are there, as Mark mentioned, as a resource. It's as a resource. I attend many meetings. I don't often speak, right? Because unless I'm asked a specific question, or if I ask permission to add to something, it's always a little different.
You make a good point though about that aspect. Is yes, the value of senior staff being involved in this. I make a few other points. It's sometimes a lot of the great decisions, even politics or whatever like that, doesn't happen actually in the room. It's offside.
Oh yes.
Offside. But that encouraging that relationship of trust over time is what really makes it important. But in line with that too, I think we also have to create safe spaces for board directors to feel like they can talk behind the staff's back, and it's okay, and ask the questions because of this. Because here's the thing, while that's really valuable, the other thing that I've noticed over the years, which is really amazing, because I've actually held focus groups with board directors, and I've told the executive directors, I said, with due respect, you're not the problem. I want to hear from the board directors.
Right.
Julia, Jarrett, I can tell you the dynamic is different.
Yeah, I bet.
It's so dynamic because here it goes back to ego. Who wants to ever look or feel like they're stupid?
Right.
Of course. Yeah.
You don't realize what staff don't often realize is that you've got a unique advantage over the board. They're not in this 40 hours a day. At most of them come in a few hours. Like me, I sit on the board of an international NGO association, and I got, with my busy family life and all like this, I set a few hours out once or twice a month to really immerse myself, think, reflect, and then I go to the board meeting.
Yeah, okay. and that's very fair, I think.
So with that comes about, there's a lot of stuff that I might not necessarily know all of the context around there, but that's not my job. My job is largely to be able to be there and to provide big picture thinking like this. And that's what board members are actually passionate about. So when that comes about, and there's a situation that might come about, and you're not really sure, board members will often go clamp up, and they'll say, because for a few reasons, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look controversial. I don't want to look like a troublemaker.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That goes back to ego.
Goes back to ego. As we wrap up today's time, and unfortunately it's going really fast, so that buzzer is going to hit us pretty quickly. Let's talk about, really, well, Julia, you're getting ahead of me, is giving back and crafting that legacy. So looking at, you talked about this throughout, the episode a little bit, but how can we encourage our board members to really, hone in on what is that legacy that they want to leave, and what's our role, Mark, as staff to work with them on that?
I think our role is to finally, let's get past this martyrdom kind of concept and really embrace, why does somebody do this?
Yeah.
Why does somebody do this? And give it to them and embrace this, because if we start doing that, you create an environment that is inviting, you create a culture that welcomes and gets the best talent. Some of the best board directors in my mind are some of the busiest. And I dare say some of them are a bit of a prima donna too. They can be a bit of a prima donna there. And I see that in a positive way as well. So we've got to be able to willing to embrace a bit more of a culture of the with them, the what's in it for me for being a board director.
Yeah,
fantastic. And we've got to start doing that in the recruiting process.
Okay, well, let's now pull up his slide. Tell us a little bit about the summit, Mark, that's coming up as we wrap up, because that is being held when?
That's coming up in the fall, tentatively set for middle of September. This is our second. This is the Society of Nonprofit Board Directors. You can look us up at nonprofitboarddirectors.org. But here at nonprofitboardsummit.org, we still have last year's site up, but you can still register your name in to be on the pre-registration list to be invited to this. Last year's conference, we had attracted over 400. We had over 400 registrants from board directors only. Board directors only from around the world, actually.
Fantastic.
Some of the leading experts like this, where we went and we said, frankly speaking to and diplomatically to the executive directors, with due respect, two things. This, you're not the problem. This is a place for your board to really double check their assumptions if it's correct. Mm-hmm. And from board executive directors as well, we said, send us your board, because in the end, you're going to end up with a better boss.
Yep. Stronger. Well, hey, we just, as you know, or may not have known, but we were just at AFP Icon, where we broadcasted live. The Nonprofit Show is ready to hit the road. So if you would like us to broadcast live from the summit, please let us know. We would love to be there and offer that opportunity to the board of directors. It's fantastic what you're doing, and it is definitely needed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Julia Patrick. I've been joined today by Jarrett Ransom, the nonprofit nerd. Again, we want to thank all of our presenting sponsors who've been with us day in, day out. Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, your part-time controller, nonprofit nerd, Fundraising Academy, the Nonprofit Atlas, Nonprofit Thought Leader, and Staffing Boutique. These are the companies and individuals that support our sector day in and day out. As a daily live broadcast, they are with us to really spread the message of how to be more efficient in the nonprofit sector and how to work together. You know, we have 1.8 million registered nonprofits in the US. Mark, you're coming to us from Canada.
I am indeed, yeah.
Do you know what that national number is?
I have heard figures that as anywhere from 24 to 50,000 there. Of course, we're about roughly 1/10 of the population of the US. So that's about representative. But when you think about it, there's average board size is about 10 individuals. That's a lot of people right there.
It's a huge number. And I think that's why, you know, when you just look at North America, I mean, this is a big deal. And we are having our own, if you will, you know, staffing crisis just in getting, you know, board representation. So Mark, it's been great to have you on. Jarrett Ransom, nonprofit nerd. Thank you, my friend. It's as always, it's great to have you here. Hey, everybody, join us back tomorrow as we have Friday, as Miss Jarrett Ransom has coined it, where we have our Ask and Answer episode. It's really the only day of the week where we get to do this. And it's going to be a real barn burner. I'm amazed at the questions that come in. And so we will put those out and have that great discussion. As we end this episode of the Nonprofit Show, we want to remind everyone to stay well so you can do well. We'll see you back here tomorrow.